The South China Sea is one of the most strategically and economically important waterways in the world. Around 30% of global maritime trade, valued at over $3 trillion annually, passes through this body of water to countries such as China, Japan, and South Korea. The South China Sea encompasses a portion of the Pacific Ocean stretching roughly from the Strait of Malacca in the southwest to the Strait of Taiwan in the northeast. The sea is bordered by several countries, including China to the north, Taiwan to the northeast, the Philippines to the east, Malaysia and Brunei to the south, and Vietnam to the west. The sea is connected to the Pacific Ocean through the Luzon Strait and to the Indian Ocean via the Strait of Malacca. It has an area of approximately 3.5 million square kilometers, similar in size to the entire landmass of India, which is about 3.29 million square kilometers. The South China Sea has historically been an important trade route, connecting Northeast Asia, China, and Southeast Asia to India and the West. Generally, oil and natural resources from the Middle East are transported northward to energy-dependent nations such as China, Japan, and South Korea. China, in particular, relies heavily on these imports, with 80% of its oil shipments and 39.5% of its total trade passing through this route. Meanwhile, manufactured goods from China and neighboring countries, such as electronics, machinery, and textiles, flow southward to markets in Southeast Asia, South Asia, and beyond. Not only is the South China Sea a major shipping route, but it is also a significant source of energy. It is estimated that approximately 11 billion barrels of oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas lie beneath its seabed. The sea is also heavily fished and is the main source of animal protein for the densely populated Southeast Asian area. Understandably, several countries have made competing territorial claims over the South China Sea. Such disputes have been regarded as Asia's most potentially dangerous point of conflict. Claimant states are interested in retaining or acquiring the rights to fishing stocks, the exploitation of crude oil and natural gas, and the strategic control of important shipping lanes. Both China and Taiwan claim almost the entire body as their own, demarcating their claims within what is known as the Nine-Dash Line. The Nine-Dash Line is a U-shaped boundary that China uses to claim most of the South China Sea. It appears on Chinese maps as 9 or more dashes that stretch from China's coast down to waters near countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. China says this line is based on historical records showing ancient Chinese activity in the region. However, other countries and international law, such as the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, do not fully recognize this claim. This ongoing dispute has led to tensions between China and its neighbors, who also claim parts of the sea, as well as between China and external powers like the United States, which advocates for freedom of navigation in the region. The South China Sea is home to several groups of islands that are strategically and economically significant. The key island groups in the region include the Spratly Islands, Paracel Islands, Pratas Islands, Scarborough Shoal, and the Natuna Islands. These islands are claimed by various countries, leading to ongoing geopolitical tensions. The most prominent disputes revolve around the Paracel and Spratly Islands, along with various recent shoals. In the 19th century, European powers, particularly France, colonized Vietnam and formally claimed the Paracel and Spratly Islands in 1932. During World War II, Japan seized control of these islands from France, using them as strategic military bases. After Japan's defeat in 1945, it renounced its claims to the islands under the 1951 Treaty of San Francisco. However, the treaty did not specify a new owner, leaving the island status unresolved and setting the stage for future territorial disputes. Both China and South Vietnam sought control over the unclaimed islands, prompting South Vietnam to establish a small military presence on the Paracel archipelago in an effort to assert its claims. In 1974, during the final years of the Vietnam War, China launched a military offensive and seized the Paracel Islands from South Vietnam in the Battle of the Paracel Islands. The brief but intense conflict resulted in 18 Chinese and 53 Vietnamese casualties. Since then, China has maintained control over the entire Paracel archipelago, constructing military facilities, runways, and outposts to strengthen its presence. In response to China's growing influence, Vietnam moved to occupy several islands in the Spratly Archipelago. Today, the Paracel Islands remain under Chinese control, but are still contested by both Taiwan and Vietnam. The Spratly Islands, meanwhile, are claimed by all three, with Vietnam occupying the largest number of features and Taiwan controlling the biggest individual feature, the Taiping Island. The Philippines also asserts ownership of parts of the South China Sea. According to historical records, Filipino explorer Tomas Cloma discovered the Calayan Island group in the Spratly Archipelago during the 1950s, naming it Freedom Land. He later ceded his claim to the Philippine government, which officially incorporated the islands and continues to administer them as a municipality of Palawan Province. The Philippines maintains both military and civilian presence on several islands in the region. Its largest occupied feature is the Pagasa Island, which serves as the administrative center of Calayan Municipality. The island is equipped with an airstrip, civilian community, and military installations, reinforcing the country's sovereignty in the disputed waters. The Philippines also lays claim to Scarborough Shoal due to its geographical proximity. According to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, coastal states have an exclusive economic zone extending 200 nautical miles from their shores. Scarborough Shoal, situated approximately 120 nautical miles off Luzon Island, falls well within this boundary. The Philippines has long regarded the shoal as part of its territory, particularly due to its historical use by Filipino fishermen. However, Chinese Coast Guard vessels frequently block Filipino fishermen from accessing the shoal, asserting China's territorial claims under its 9-dash line. This has led to rising tensions and repeated diplomatic protests from the Philippines, as Chinese actions threaten the Philippines' access to the shoal's rich marine resources. Malaysia also claims a section of the Spratly Islands, including several reefs which fall within its exclusive economic zone. The country has stationed military personnel and developed infrastructure on the Swallow Reef, where it has built an airstrip and a resort. Brunei's claim is relatively modest compared to other Southeast Asian nations. It asserts sovereignty over its exclusive economic zone, particularly the Luaisa Reef, which falls within its 200 nautical mile limit. Unlike other claimant states, Brunei does not occupy any islands or reefs in the South China Sea. Brunei generally avoids public confrontation over the issue and prefers quiet diplomacy. China has been actively building artificial islands in the South China Sea in an effort to solidify its territorial claims and expand its control over strategically important waters. Through a process called land reclamation, massive ships are used to extract sand and sediments from the seabed, depositing them onto reefs or shallow waters to build up land masses. The islands are then reinforced with concrete and steel structures in order to stabilize the land and prevent erosion. Although the islands are too small to support large military units, they will sustain air and sea patrols, strengthening China's influence in the area. Fiery Cross Reef is one of China's most strategically important new islands, with an airstrip that is long enough to allow the country to land any plane, from fighter jets to large transport aircraft. However, this rapid expansion comes at a cost. Several reefs have been completely destroyed in order to serve as a foundation for new islands. This process has been heavily criticized as it causes extensive damage to the surrounding marine ecosystem due to accumulation of sediment in the water. The United States has about $1.2 trillion in bilateral trade go through the South China Sea every year. To protect its political, security, and economic interests in the region, the U.S. government has challenged China's assertive control over the sea by conducting freedom of navigation operations and bolstering support for Southeast Asian partners. In 1951, the U.S. and the Philippines signed a mutual defense treaty, which obligates both nations to defend each other in the event of an external attack. This applies to any attack on Philippine vessels, particularly concerning disputes with China. As part of the Freedom of Navigation program, the United States Navy sent its state-of-the-art guided missile destroyer, the USS Lassen, into waters within 12 nautical miles of the disputed islands. This operation was intended to assert that the United States does not recognize any 12 nautical mile territories or any other maritime entitlements generated by the construction of artificial islands. The patrols have repeatedly drawn strong reactions from China, which views them as provocations. However, the dispute has evolved way beyond just territorial claims and energy resources, turning the South China Sea into a focal point of U.S.-China strategic rivalry in the Western Pacific.